Article is quite an interesting one from NBC News. So I'm going to read this article for today's daily reading mission set by me. Science News. Fossil footprints show humans in North America more than 21,000 years ago. The footprints, the earliest firm evidence for humans in the Americas, show that people must have arrived here before the last ice age. So 21,000 years ago, people were there roaming around in North America, and that's before the last ice age. Oldest human footprints in North America found in New Mexico. Okay. New Mexico is the southern part of the USA. If they just migrate from Korea or northern part of China, which used to be ours, Korea's territory, we will claim that later. But or the people from Siberia, if all those people migrated to the North America before the last ice age, they probably wanted to go down as far as New Mexico, which is relatively mild, comfortable area to live in, with high temperatures in the winter. September 23rd, 2021, 6 p.m. UTC by Tom Metcalf. Hi, Tom, by Tom Metcalf. I respect you. You are a good journalist. David Bustos heard about the ghost tracks when he first went to White Sands National Park in New Mexico to work as a wildlife scientist in 2005. Wildlife scientist. When the ground was wet enough at certain times of the year, the ghostly footprints would appear on the otherwise blank earth, only to disappear again when it dried out. Interesting, not the other way around. They appear on the otherwise blank earth, only to disappear again when it dried out. It wasn't until over 10 years later, in 2016, that scientists confirmed that the ghost tracks had been made by real people, and it's only now that some of the ancient footprints at White Sands have been dated as the earliest in North America. We'd been suspicious of the age for a while, and so now we finally have that it's really exciting, Bustos said. One of the neat things is that you can see mammoth prints in the layers a meter or so above the human footprints. So that just helps to confirm the whole story. The footprints at White Sands were dated by examining the seeds of an aquatic plant that once thrived along the shores of the dried up lake. Rupia sarhosa, commonly known as ditchgrass. According to research published Thursday in the journal Science and co-authored by Bustos, the ancient ditchgrass seeds were found in layers of hard earth both above and below the many human footprints at the site, and they were radiocarbon dated to determine their age. Radiocarbon dated. radiocarbon dated, radiocarbon dated, radiocarbon dated ditch grass found in layers of hard earth both above and below the many human footprints at the site. Trails of footprints called ghost tracks have been seen in the White Sands area for years, but usually only when the ground was wet. NPS, USGS, and Bournemouth University. The tracks at one location have been revealed as both the earliest known footprints and the oldest firm evidence of humans anywhere in the Americas, showing that people lived there 21,000 to 23,000 years ago. Several thousand years earlier than scientists once believed. It's the earliest unequivocal evidence for humans in the Americas, said the lead author of the study, Matthew Bennett, a professor of environmental and geographic sciences at Bournemouth University in the UK. It's the earliest unequivocal evidence. Unequivocal. It's the earliest unequivocal evidence. It's the earliest unequivocal evidence. It's the earliest unequivocal evidence for humans in the Americas. Fossilized human footprints have now been found throughout the east of the national park, where the bed of a paleo lake, which is now dry, supplies the gypsum-rich earth that is eroded by the wind to create the enormous white dunes for which the region is famous. White dunes, eroded gypsum-rich earth. The gypsum-rich earth, the gypsum-rich earth, the gypsum-rich earth, paleo lake. Any traces of early human habitation had been disputed because they relied on what seemed to be stone tools that might have formed naturally, Bennett said, or on artifacts that might have moved from their original stratigraphic layers. A footprint is a real good, unequivocal data point, he said. That's the importance of this site. We know they were there. Any traces of early human habitation had been disputed because they relied on what seemed to be stone tools that might have formed naturally, Bennett said. The team has studied the footprints at White Sands National Park for years. Oh, White Sands, white dunes, excavating trenches and following the tracks with ground-penetrating radar. NPS, USGS, and Bournemouth University. The footprints would in turn give greater credibility to other evidence of early humans in the Americas. You can now look at the oldest sites and say, we know they were there during the last glacial maximum. So maybe some of these oldest sites are also reliable, he said. The term last glacial maximum is how scientists refer to the height of the last ice age about 20,000 to 26,000 years ago. Last glacial maximum. It has long been debated whether humans arrived in the Americas by a northern route from Siberia before or after the last glacial maximum, which vast sheets of ice would have made migration along the Pacific coast or through western Canada impossible. The ancient footprints at White Sands answer that question, suggesting that they may have arrived up to 30,000 years ago, thousands of years before the height of the Ice Age, Bennett said. Before 3,000 years or thousands of years before the height of the Ice Age, Bennett said. The location of the new excavations was the shore of a wetland when the footprints were made 21,000 to 23,000 years ago. White Sands is now mostly a desert, but it was a lush wetland at the time the footprints were made. Lush wetland, and populated by mammoths, ground sloths, bovids, cattle, and wild camels, as well as by the Stone Age humans who hunted them. Bovids, cattle, bovids, ground sloths, mammoths. The footprints, which are intermingled with the tracks of the animals, show that people must have lived there for at least 2,000 years. Cornell University archaeologist Thomas Urban, a co-author of the research, said in an email. There are multiple footprint layers spanning a significant amount of time, suggesting a sustained human presence in the area during the last glacial maximum, as opposed to a single event, he said. Sustained human presence. Urban developed the non-invasive use of ground-penetrating radar to reveal the footprints beneath the surface and show the researchers the best places to excavate. Smaller footprints made by teenagers and children outnumber those made by adults, Urban said, possibly because they were involved in tasks that involved simple labor instead of skilled tasks like hunting. New research into the ancient footprints at White Sands National Park establishes they are the earliest known evidence of humans in North America. The presence is simply part of ordinary life and should be expected, he said. Their activities may have ranged from playing to chores such as gathering food, water, and raw materials for their hunter-gatherer community. Geologist Cynthia Lutkus-Pierce of Appalachian State University in North Carolina, who has studied ancient human footprints in Tanzania and wasn't involved in the White Sands research, said it was often difficult to date just when fossilized footprints were made, especially when they were pressed into layers of mud, as at White Sands, and not into more easily dated volcanic ash. It's great to see that this team was able to constrain the date of the footprint formation using radiocarbon dates from the layers above and below, she said in an email. Radiocarbon dated Unlike bones and artifacts, footprints are unique in that they recorded fossilized behavior, and their analysis can yield clues about the printmakers. Clues yield clues about the printmakers. Human footprints give us a glimpse into the lives of our ancestors, and in this case, provide detailed information on their day-to-day activities and social dynamics, Lutkus Pierce said. So, sustained human presence, printmakers, footprint, depressed, impressed, glacial maximum, layers above and below, carbon dates, radiocarbonated, sustained human presence, migration, warm, several thousand years before the last glacial maximum. Inaccurate, not accepted. Email. NBC News. They found humans 21,000 years ago in North America, New Mexico, and that's it. That's it for today's daily reading.